US President Donald Trump, meanwhile, is trying to create a bloc to counter China. Having strong economic allies by your side is one sure way to do it. So, for this year's G7 summit in September, Trump thought of inviting more guests. Emerging economic powers such as Australia, Russia, South Korea and India. Trump says the current composition of the G7 is outdated. We agree. The G7 members do too, but they have a problem. One particular invitee, and that's Russia. We'll tell you why, but first things first. This year's G7 summit is fraught with hurdles. First, China exported the virus, then it tried to kill Hong Kong, and now there are riots over racism in America. Trump is the host for this year's summit, and he's created enough drama already. First, Trump was hell-bent on holding the summit, even if it was through video conferencing. Others didn't agree. Their countries were fighting the Wuhan virus. The G7 could wait, they said. Then Donald Trump sent out invites again, this time for an in-person meeting towards the end of June, this month. He said there could be no greater example of reopening, a signal to return to normalcy. German Chancellor Angela Merkel bluntly rejected the invite. She said the risk of the pandemic was still too great to ignore. Now Donald Trump has fired a fresh salvo. He wants a bigger party. He wants India and Russia getting a seat at the table. On the question of India, the members appear keen. Last year, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi had attended the event in Biarritz, in southwestern France. The invite had come from French President Emmanuel Macron himself. Now it's US President Donald Trump taking this one step forward. What should India do? Should India see this as an opportunity to join the leading Western bloc? Or should India see this as a polarizing move? There's a border dispute brewing with China. Trump wants to mediate. India has politely declined the interference, but there are no free lunches even at the G7. India brings a lot to the table. As a rising economic power, India can make the group more relevant. In terms of GDP, India has surpassed Canada, Italy, France and the UK already. But two of these countries, France and the UK, hold a permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council. India wants that seat. India deserves a seat too, a permanent seat at the UNSC. The US, France and the UK may support India's bid. At this point, it's unclear if India's inclusion in the G7 summit will be made permanent, but it could surely be a step towards the UN Security Council. As for Russia, it won't be that simple. There is troublesome history to contend with. Until 2014, G7 used to be G8. Russia was part of this group, the group of 8, G8. In 2014, Russia was expelled. That's because it captured the Crimea region in Ukraine. So the G7 was left with 7 countries, obviously. The US, Japan, France, Germany, the UK, Canada and Italy. And they are not ready to have Russia back. Most of them aren't, it seems. One member has already expressed reservations, Canada.
Russia was excluded from the G7 after it invaded Crimea a number of years ago. And its continued disrespect and flaunting of international rules and norms is why it remains outside of the G7 and will continue to remain out.
Trump has been pushing for Russia's inclusion since he took office in 2017, mostly to draw Moscow away from its relationship with Beijing. How has Russia responded to this invite? With skepticism. The Kremlin has asked for more information. It even asked what's on the agenda. Trump had to make a phone call to Vladimir Putin to convince him. On the other hand, Australia and South Korea have accepted the invite, Australia in particular, garnering tremendous goodwill with Donald Trump after they called for an investigation into the Wuhan virus outbreak. So Donald Trump could expand the G7, turn it into G11, provided he convinces the other members on the question of Russia. If Trump succeeds in turning this into G11, he could weaken the G20. What does that mean? It works against China because G20 is a group which includes China. This is geopolitical chess, and we'll see who will checkmate whom.